The sun was just beginning to rise over Lagos, painting the city in colors of gold and orange. It was December, and the festive spirit was in the air. The streets buzzed with activity as traders prepared for another busy day at Alaba International Market, the largest electronics market in West Africa. The sound of hawkers advertising their goods blended with the rump of trucks and honking of impatient doubtfuls, creating the familiar chaos of Lagos life. Ugonna stood outside his shop in the heart of the market, a proud smile on his face. His shop wasn't the biggest, but it was well known. Customers came from far and wide to buy his electronics, and he had earned a reputation for selling only authentic products. Original TV, original speaker, original life, he would joke, clapping his hands as he convinced yet another customer to make a purchase. That morning, Ugonna's heart was light. He had been planning this for months, and now it was a day away. Christmas was just a few days away, and he was preparing to travel home to his village in Enugu State. This wasn't just any trip. This was the trip, the one he had been dreaming about for years. Ugonna had grown up in the village with his mother, Mama Uju. She was a strong woman who had raised him alone after his father passed away when he was just a boy. Life hadn't been easy, but Mama Uju never complained. She worked tirelessly, farming cassava and yams to provide for Ugonna and ensure he went to school. Now, Ugonna was a man, and he had made something of himself. He had started his electronic business with nothing but a few items from his late father and a dream. Over the years, through hard work and determination, he had built a thriving business, and now he could finally give back to the woman who had given him everything. That was why this Christmas was special. Ugonna had bought a brand new car, a sleek black GLE 450 Mercedes-Benz, and he couldn't wait to surprise his mother. The next day came. The morning was bright and clear as Ugonna finished his final preparations for the journey to his village. The harmattan breeze brushed against his face as he stepped outside, carrying his last bag to the car. The sleek black GLE 450 Mercedes-Benz gleamed in the sunlight, standing proud in the midst of the busy Lagos neighborhood. Ugonna could feel the excitement bubbling in his chest. This wasn't just any trip. This was the first time he would drive his new car home. The car he had worked so hard to buy. More importantly, this car was for his mother. A symbol of gratitude for all the years of sacrifices she had made for him. Ugonna double-checked everything before setting off. He opened the car's boot, neatly arranged the bags of gifts he had prepared for his family, clothes for his cousins, a large bag of rice for the household, and his mother's special surprise, a box of Hollandaise and a brand new smartphone packed in a shiny red gift bag. Perfect, Ugonna said to himself, closing the boot with a satisfied smile. His neighbor, Aunty Ngozi, walked up to him and said, Ugonna, my son, you are off to the village.
Yes, ma. It's time to go and see Mama,
he replied, leaning on the car. Ah, safe journey, my dear. Greet her for me, Aunty Ngozi said, her face lighting up with a smile. As Ugonna waved her off, his friend Emeka jogged up, slightly out of breath.
Ugonna, so you don't want to call me before leaving? I thought you were busy.
Ugonna replied, smiling.
Busy doing what? You are my guy.
How can you leave without telling me?
Emeka walked around the car, whistling in admiration.
This your car is the real deal, oh. Are you sure you won't dash me small, eh?
Ugonna laughed.
Dash you? My friend, this one is for Mama. When I buy the next one, I will think about you.
They both laughed as Emeka helped him check the tires and the oil one more time.
Everything looks fine,
Emeka said.
But Ugonna, have you prayed?
Ugonna rolled his eyes playfully.
You and this your prayer talk. I prayed last night. Isn't that enough?
Emeka frowned.
You know, December journeys are not ordinary, especially when you're traveling to the village. You should pray again. These roads are dangerous, and not just because of the potholes.
Ugonna waved him off.
Emeka, don't worry. My car is solid, and I'm a careful driver. What could go wrong?
Emeka shook his head but didn't argue further. Instead, he clapped Ugonna on the back.
Alright, my guy. Just be careful, okay? And call me when you get there. I will.
Ugonna promised. Driving through Lagos was no small feat, especially during the festive season. The streets were crowded with people rushing to buy last-minute items for Christmas. Danfo buses waved recklessly between cars, their conductors shouting destinations as passengers scrambled to board. Street hawkers darted between vehicles, selling everything from plantain chips to phone chargers. Ugonna maneuvered the car carefully, his hands steady on the wheel. The air conditioning hummed softly, and the smooth leather seats made the ride comfortable despite the chaos outside. He glanced at the dashboard clock. It was already past 9 in the morning.
This traffic will delay me,
he muttered, tapping the steering wheel impatiently. Eventually, he managed to escape the worst of the congestion and hit the highway leading out of Lagos. The open road stretched ahead, flanked by green bushes and the occasional billboard advertising soft drinks or telecom services. Ugonna turned on the radio, letting the upbeat Afrobeat tunes fill the car as he drove. He sang along, all excited, not knowing the dangers ahead. His stepmother, Mama Ijoma, had other plans for him. Mama Ijoma had not always been like this. Years ago, when she married Ugonna's father, Chief Nnadi, she had dreams of becoming the matriarch of the family, respected and loved by all. But those dreams were dashed when she realized that she would always be second to Mama Uju, Ugonna's mother. She's nothing special, Mama Ijoma had once hissed to herself, watching Mama Uju in the market. But everyone treats her like a queen. Chief Nnadi's affection for his first wife had been a thorn in Mama Ijoma's side. Even after his death, his legacy and blessings seemed to flow only to Mama Uju and her son. Ugonna was the apple of the family's eye, and his success only deepened Mama Ijoma's bitterness. He works in Lagos now, she muttered as she adjusted the mirror on the table, selling electronics and sending money to his mother. What about me? What have I gotten from him all these years? Her resentment had festered over time, growing into a dark, consuming force. And when she stumbled upon the mirror, a gift from an old friend who dabbled in the supernatural, her bitterness found an outlet. This mirror sees everything, her friend had said. It can guide you or destroy your enemies. The mirror wasn't an ordinary piece of glass. Its surface was dark, almost liquid, and it shimmered faintly even in the absence of light. Mama Ijoma discovered its powers by accident one night, years ago, when she whispered Ugonna's name into it. To her shock, the mirror showed her Ugonna's face, laughing with his mother. From then on, she used the mirror to spy on him. 2 days before Ugonna embarked on the journey, Mama Ijoma spied on him. "Let me see him," she said, her voice low and sharp. The mirror shined unsteady, its surface moving before settling on an image. There was Ugonna, standing beside a sleek black car, his face lit with pride. He was in Lagos, showing off the car to his friends. Mama Ijoma's heart burned with envy. "A car?" she spat. "So now he's buying cars. What about me? What do I have?" She leaned closer to the mirror, her voice dripping with malice. "Where is he taking that car?" The mirror shifted again, showing Ugonna parking the car with bags and gifts. Mama Ijoma watched as he carefully arranged everything in the boot, smiling to himself. Then she saw something that made her heart pound with rage. Ugonna holding a gift box labeled for Mama. "That woman again," she said angrily, slamming her fist on the table. "Everything he does is for her. Does he think I'm invisible?" Her mind raced. She couldn't allow Ugonna to reach the village and flaunt his success. She couldn't stand the thought of Mama Uju being celebrated while she sat in the shadows. But what could she do? Mama Ijoma paced the room. The mirror watched silently, its surface now dark and still. Finally, she stopped and looked at it again. "If he won't respect me, I will teach him a lesson. I'll make sure he never forget that I'm still here." She opened a small wooden box on her table, pulled out a bundle of dried leaves and a piece of red cloth. These were items she had been given long ago, said to summon misfortune when used with the right words. Carefully, she wrapped the cloth around the leaves and placed them in front of the mirror. Then she lit a small candle, its wavering flame casting strange shadows across the room. "Let his journey be difficult," she began, her voice steady and deliberate. "Let the road turn against him. Let his joy become fear." The mirror glowed faintly as she chanted. The air in the room grew heavy. Mama Ijoma felt a surge of power come through her, and she smiled wickedly. She didn't want to kill Ugonna. No, that would be too easy. She wanted him to suffer, to return to Lagos with nothing but regret. But as she continued her ritual, something unexpected happened. The mirror trembled slightly. Its surface rippled like water. Mama Ijoma froze, her heart racing. She had never seen it behave like this before. "What is this?" she said, leaning closer. The mirror showed her a vision of a school bus, filled with children laughing and singing. It was traveling down the same road Ugonna would take. Then the image shifted, showing the bus straying out of control and crashing into Ugonna's car. Mama Ijoma shook. This wasn't what she had planned. She wanted Ugonna to be humiliated, not involved in a terrible accident. But the mirror had already decided. Its power was beyond her control now. "No, this is not what I wanted," she muttered, reaching for the mirror. But as her fingers touched its surface, she felt a jolt of energy that made her pull back with a cry. The mirror went dark, its message clear. The plan was in motion. For the rest of the day, Mama Ijoma couldn't shake the vision from her mind. She tried to busy herself with chores, but her thoughts kept returning to the accident. What if someone died? What if Ugonna was hurt? She paced her compound, her heart heavy with guilt. She told herself that it wasn't her fault, that she hadn't planned for things to go this far. But deep down, she knew the truth. This is what happens when you meddle with powers you don't understand. She muttered to herself, but it was too late to turn back now. As the sun began to set, Mama Ijoma returned to her room. She sat in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her face looked older, worn down by years of bitterness and envy. Maybe nothing will happen, she said out loud, as if trying to convince herself, but the fear in her heart refused to fade. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Ugonna was singing and driving with excitement and confidence. He had no idea of the danger that awaited him on the road. 2 hours into the journey, Ugonna had followed a yellow school bus down the highway earlier. He had noticed the driver straying slightly, as if distracted or tired. Something in the pit of his stomach had warned him to keep a safe distance, but he had ignored it.
They should have done better maintenance on this bus,
he had muttered, keeping his hands steady on the wheel. Inside the bus, the children had been laughing and singing Christmas songs, their voices floating through the open windows, blending with the rush of the wind. For a brief moment, Ugonna had smiled. The driver of the school bus had tried to avoid a massive pothole, jerking the wheel too hard. The vehicle had strayed into Ugonna's lane, and before he could react, the bus sidewiped his car, sending it spinning off the road. The sound of the crash had been deafening. Ugonna's car slid across the road, spinning wildly before coming to a stop in a shallow ditch by the side of the street. For a moment, everything was silent. Ugonna sat frozen in his driver's seat. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His heart was pounding and his breathing was shallow.
"Am I alive?"
he thought, his mind racing. Slowly he looked down at his hand, then his legs. Nothing seemed broken, but his body ached from the force of the impact.
"Thank God,"
he said, his voice shaking. He turned to look at the school bus. It had stopped a few meters ahead, tilted slightly to one side. Through the shattered windows, he could see the children moving inside. Some were crying, their faces covered with tears, but none of them seemed badly hurt. Ugonna unbuckled his seatbelt and pushed open the door. The sound of metal scraping against metal sent a shiver down his spine. He stumbled out of the car, his legs shaky, and made his way toward the bus.
"Is everyone okay?"
Ugonna called out as he approached the bus. The bus driver, an old man with grey hair, was slumped over the steering wheel. His eyes were half open and he seemed dazed. Ugonna knocked on the window, trying to get his attention.
"Driver, are you okay?"
he asked, his voice firm. The man blinked a few times before nodding weakly.
I think so,"
he mumbled. Inside the bus, the older children were helping the younger ones climb out through the emergency exit. Some of the children were crying, their voices filling the air with a mix of fear and relief. "Don't cry," one of the older girls said, her tone surprisingly calm. "We are okay." Ugonna stepped in to help. He reached up, lifting the smaller children out of the bus one by one. Each time he set one down on the ground, he felt a surge of gratitude that none of them were seriously hurt.
"It's okay,"
he said softly to a little boy holding his backpack.
"You are safe now."
The boy sniffed, nodding as he wiped his eyes. By now, other vehicles had stopped, and a crowd of onlookers was beginning to gather. Drivers and passengers from passing cars got out to help. Some offered water and first aid. A few men worked together to help the bus driver climb down from his seat. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burnt rubber. Ugonna could hear people murmuring around him, their voices a mix of concern and curiosity.
"Thank God no one died,"
one man said, shaking his head as he surveyed the damage.
But look at that car,"
another replied, pointing to Ugonna's Mercedes.
"That's not an ordinary car. The owner must have spent millions on it."
Ugonna ignored the comments, his focus on the children.
"Where is the teacher in charge?"
he asked the bus driver, who was now sitting on the ground, holding his head. The man shook his head.
"No teacher. I was just told to drive them back to the village."
Ugonna frowned.
"You shouldn't have been driving if you were tired. These are children's lives we are talking about."
The driver looked down ashamed. As Ugonna walked back to his car to check the damage, he noticed an elderly man standing a short distance away. The man was tall and thin, with a walking stick in one hand and a mysterious air about him. He was dressed simple, but there was something about his presence that made Ugonna pause.
"Young man,"
the elder called out, his voice deep and commanding. Ugonna turned to him surprised.
"Yes, sir. You were lucky today,"
the elder said, his gaze steady.
"Very lucky."
Ugonna nodded.
"Yes, sir. Thank God no one was hurt."
The man stepped closer, leaning slightly on his walking stick.
"This was no ordinary accident,"
he said.
"Someone doesn't want you to reach your destination."
Ugonna felt a chill run down his spine.
"What do you mean, sir?"
The elder's eyes seemed to pierce through him.
"There are forces at work, my son. Forces you may not understand. Pray. Pray hard, for the road ahead is still long."
Before Ugonna could respond, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the growing crowd. Ugonna stood there, his heart pounding. The elder's word echoed in his mind.
"Someone doesn't want you to reach your destination."
He thought of his stepmother, Mama Ijoma, and the bitterness she had always showed towards him and his mother.
Could she have something to do with this?
The thought made his stomach turn.
"No,"
he muttered to himself, shaking his head.
"This is just a coincidence. It has to be."
But deep down, he wasn't so sure. With the help of some villagers, Ugonna managed to arrange for his car to get towed to a nearby mechanic. The children from the bus were taken to a safe spot by some of the bystanders, and arrangements were made for another vehicle to take them home. As Ugonna watched his car being loaded onto the tow truck, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. The excitement and pride he had felt that morning were gone, replaced by a heavy sense of frustration and unease. Despite the setback, Ugonna was determined to continue his journey. He called his mother to let her know he was delayed but didn't mention the accident.
"Mama, I'll be home soon,"
he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Okay, my son. I can't wait to see you," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. Ugonna smiled, her words giving him the strength to push forward. As the sun began to set, he sat by the side of the road, waiting for the tow truck to finish its work. The harmattan wind brushed against his face, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and dry leaves. He closed his eyes and said a prayer, asking for protection for the rest of his journey.
"No matter what happens,"
he said to himself,
"I'll get this car to Mama. She deserves it."
The sun had set by the time Ugonna arrived in the village, and the familiar sound of cricket filled the air. Despite the damage to his car and the unsettling events of the day, a wave of relief washed over him as he turned onto the narrow dirt road leading to his family home. The air smelled of burning firewood and freshly cooked food, a scent that always reminded him of home. Ugonna had managed to arrange for his car to be temporarily patched up by a roadside mechanic, enough to make it to the village. The once sleek black GLE 450 now bore the scars of accidents, a cracked windshield and scratch that spot its shiny surface. Still, it was functional, and that was all that mattered. As he pulled into the compound, the headlights illuminated a small bungalow where his mother, Mama Uju, lived. The house was modest, its walls painted with a faint shade of white. Ugonna's heart swelled as he spotted his mother sitting on the veranda. "My son, you are here!" Mama Uju exclaimed, rushing to hug him as Ugonna stepped out of the car.
Yes, Mama, I'm home,
Ugonna replied, his voice thick with emotion. He wrapped his arms around her, inhaling the familiar scent of her wrapper, a mixture of soap and wood smoke. Mama Uju pulled back, holding him at arm's length to examine his face. "You look tired. Have you eaten? How was your journey?"
It was fine, Mama,
Ugonna lied, forcing a smile.
I will tell you everything later. Let's go inside.
But before they could head in, Mama Uju's eyes fell on the car. Her expression shifted from joy to concern as she noticed the damage. "Ugonna, what happened to the car?" Ugonna paused, not sure how much to say. He didn't want to scare her.
It's a long story, Mama,
he said finally.
The important thing is that I'm here and I'm fine.
Mama Uju nodded slowly, though her eyes lingered on the car for a moment longer. Later that evening, after Ugonna had settled in and shared a meal with his mother, he found himself pacing the small living room. His thoughts kept returning to the accident and the strange words of the elderly man on the road.
Someone doesn't want you to reach your destination.
He couldn't ignore the possibility that his stepmother, Mama Ijoma, was involved. Her disdain for him and his mother was no secret, and she had always been known for dabbling in strange, unexpected things. Finally, unable to keep his suspicions to himself any longer, Ugonna turned to his mother.
Mama, I need to ask you something,
he said, his voice serious. "What is it, my son?"
Do you think Mami Joma could have anything to do with what happened today?
She turned to him slowly, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. "Why would you say such a thing? Ugonna, your stepmother, she has always been envious of us, but accusing her of something like this is serious."
I know, Mama,
Ugonna said,
but I can't shake the feeling that she had something to do with it. I need to talk to her.
Mama Uju frowned. "Be careful, my son. If truly she's involved, confronting her might make things worse." The next morning, Ugonna decided to visit Mami Joma. Her house was on the other side of the compound. As Ugonna approached, he felt a strange unease settle over him. He knocked on the wooden door and waited. After a moment, Mami Joma opened the door, her face a mask of surprise and suspicion. "Ugonna," she said, "what are you doing here?"
I came to talk,
Ugonna replied, his voice steady.
Can I come in?
Mami Joma paused, then stepped aside to let him in. The inside of the house was dimly lit, and Ugonna couldn't help but notice the small table in the corner, covered with strange objects, candles, herbs, and a cracked mirror. "What do you want?" Mami Joma asked, crossing her arms. Ugonna didn't waste time with pleasantries.
I had an accident on my way to the village,
he said, watching her reaction closely.
A strange man told me it wasn't ordinary, that someone didn't want me to reach here. Do you know anything about that?
Mami Joma's eyes rolled briefly, but she quickly composed herself. "Why would I know anything about your accident?" she snapped.
I don't know,
Ugonna said, his voice growing firmer.
But you've never hidden how you feel about me and my mother. If you had something to do with this, I would like you to tell me now.
For a moment there was silence. Then, to Ugonna's shock, Mama Ijoma laughed, a cold, bitter sound that sent chills down his spine. "You think you're so special, don't you?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Always flaunting your success, making your mother out to be a saint. Do you know what it's like to live in someone's shadow for years?" Ugonna stared at her, his heart pounding.
So you admit it. You tried to harm me.
Mama Ijoma's face twisted in anger. "I didn't want to kill you," she spat. "I just wanted to teach you a lesson." But the mirror. Ugonna followed her gaze and saw a cracked mirror glowing faintly.
What did you do?
He demanded. Tears began streaming down Mama Ijeoma's face as she sank into a chair. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I just wanted to make your journey difficult, to slow you down. But the mirror, it has a mind of its own. It showed me the accident before it happened, and I couldn't stop it. Ugonna felt a mix of anger and pity.
You played with forces you don't understand,
He said, his voice heavy.
You put innocent lives at risk. Do you know how many children could have died yesterday?
Mama Ijeoma buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I'm sorry, she choked out. I was jealous. I was angry. But I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Ugonna stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then he took a deep breath.
You need to stop this.
He said firmly,
Whatever bitterness you have in your heart, you need to let it go.
It's destroying you. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. I'm going to tell my mama everything, he added. You need to apologize to her and to God. That evening, Ugonna and his mother held a prayer section in their home. Together they prayed for protection, for forgiveness, and for healing. Ugonna felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he spoke the words out loud, realizing the anger he had been holding on to. Word of Mama Ijeoma's confession spread quickly through the village. Some were shocked, while others claimed they had always suspected her of practicing dark magic. For her part, Mama Ijeoma withdrew from the public eye, spending her days in solitude. Ugonna didn't see her again before he left the village, but he prayed that she would find a way to change. Like my story, please subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.